Stupid. The word hit Isabella like a slap. Not the shouting, but that quiet, dismissive, stupid years of study, a Columbia scholarship, gone. Now scrubbing truffle oil off billionaire chins. This tech bro, Finch, thinks she's just a server. He's wrong. Dead wrong. He's boasting about his AI, Project Chimera, a $3 billion deal on the line. What he doesn't see, Isabella gets his algorithms. Better than him, maybe. And she's just overheard him rerouting data through Frankfurt, a move that smells like fraud. They think she's invisible. They have no idea how her quiet kindness and her forgotten brilliance will burn his empire to the ground. Stupid. The word hit Isabella like a slap. Not the shouting, but that quiet, dismissive, stupid. Years of study, a Columbia scholarship, gone. Now scrubbing truffle oil off billionaire chins. This tech bro, Finch, thinks she's just a server. He's wrong. Dead wrong. He's boasting about his AI, Project Chimera, a $3 billion deal on the line. What he doesn't see, Isabella gets his algorithms. Better than him, maybe. And she's just overheard him rerouting data through Frankfurt, a move that smells like fraud. They think she's invisible. They have no idea how her quiet kindness and her forgotten brilliance will burn his empire to the ground. Lis Anak. The name itself whispered of hushed reverence and obscene wealth. More than a restaurant, it was a sanctum where titans of industry brokered power over dry-aged steaks and meticulously chosen vintages. The air, cool and rarefied, hummed with unspoken deals, each course a calculated move in a high-stakes game. Here Isabella moved with the practiced grace of a seasoned player, though she was anything but. She knew the seating chart like the back of her hand, each table a universe unto itself, with its own set of power dynamics. Tonight, Table 7 held the cosmos's axis. Damian Creed, patriarch of Creed Holdings, an empire built on shipping and logistics, a man whose handshake could launch 1,000 ships. Across from him, Alistair Finch, the boy king of Silicon Alley, whose AI, Project Chimera, promised to revolutionize Creed's empire. $3 billion rested on their negotiations. Isabella navigated the space between tables with an almost preternatural awareness. A subtle dip of a wine glass, a barely perceptible furrow of a brow. She anticipated needs before they were voiced, a silent guardian of impeccable service. To most, she was a ghost in the machine, a flawlessly executed component of the elaborate theater of fine dining. They saw the immaculate black dress, the tightly wound bun, the polite smile. They didn't see the sharp intellect burning beneath the surface, the mind that once devoured linguistics and dreamed of decoding the very structure of language. That was before her father's scaffolding business collapsed under the weight of unpaid invoices and bad debts, before the crushing medical bills after his heart attack. Columbia, with its promise of intellectual fulfillment, became a distant memory. Isabella traded theorems for tasting menus, sacrificing her own aspirations to keep her family afloat. But the discipline she'd honed in academia, the relentless pursuit of knowledge, the meticulous attention to detail, now infused her every action at Lis Anak. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a silent observer, an ethnographer of the elite, deciphering the subtle nuances of power and pretense. Creed arrived first, a monument in a tailored suit. His presence shifted the very atmosphere, a nod to the maitre d', a genuine smile for Isabella. He exuded old money, old power, earned through decades of shrewd deals and unwavering integrity. Finch, on the other hand, crashed in 10 minutes later, a hurricane of frenetic energy. Dressed in the uniform of New Age wealth, distressed jeans, ridiculously expensive sneakers, and a hoodie that probably cost more than Isabella's monthly rent, he was a walking billboard for disruptive technology and unapologetic arrogance. He didn't so much as glance at Isabella, barking demands into his phone as he slid into the booth. "Damien," Finch announced, his voice too loud for the intimate setting, "let's cut the pleasantries. I had my team finalize the Chimera schematics." Creed, unfazed, gestured towards Isabella. "Let the lady take our orders first, Alistair. We wouldn't want to forget our manners now, would we?" As Isabella recited the specials, a subtle dance of deference and control played out before her. Creed's quiet authority versus Finch's grating impatience. Seriously, specials? Finch sneered the second she was out of earshot. We have a $3 billion deal on the table. The night unfolded as a study in contrast. Creed, sipping a Chateau Margaux with quiet appreciation, addressing Isabella with respect, engaging her in brief, polite conversation. Finch, glued to his phone, barking orders at unseen employees, interrogating Isabella about the provenance of the ingredients as if she were on trial. Is the balsamic aged for 12 or 15 years? Be precise. Project Chimera dominated the conversation. Finch's AI marvel promising to optimize Creed's shipping empire, predicting demand, rerouting ships around storms, automating port operations. We're talking a paradigm shift, Damien, Finch declared, jabbing at his tablet. A 34% increase in efficiency in the first year alone. Isabella moved like a shadow, clearing plates, refilling water glasses, absorbing the undercurrents of the conversation. She heard Finch boast of trimming inefficiencies, code for mass layoffs of dock workers, truck drivers, warehouse managers. The backbone of Creed's empire, the people her own father resembled. Finch's brashness grated against Isabella. He exuded an almost willful blindness, mistaking rudeness for power, arrogance for intelligence. Then approaching to pour more wine, Finch snapped, "Just leave the bottle." Isabella, ever the professional, explained softly, "It is our policy to pour for our guests, sir, to ensure the wine breathes properly." Finch's eyes narrowed, cold and dismissive. "I'm not paying $1,000 for grape juice to have you interrupt my meeting every 5 minutes. Leave the bottle." A hush fell over the table. Creed's fork paused midair. He observed Finch's dismissive glare, then Isabella's unwavering composure. "She's only doing her job, Alistair, and doing it exceptionally well." Finch scoffed. "She's a waitress, Damien. Her job is to be invisible." Creed's gaze followed Isabella as she moved to another table, effortlessly switching to fluent French to assist a pair of tourists. He saw their faces light up at the sound of their native tongue, saw a spark of intelligence in Isabella's eyes, a grace under pressure that Finch, in his arrogant blindness, completely missed. Creed looked back at Finch, and a subtle shift occurred. The air crackled with unspoken judgment. As Isabella placed Finch's seared foie gras before him, the corner of her silver tray grazed his water glass. A millimeter's miscalculation, a tremor in her hand, and a few icy droplets splashed onto Finch's hand. His reaction was instantaneous and explosive. "What the hell?" he roared, leaping to his feet, flinging his hand as if burned. The entire restaurant went silent. "Watch what you're doing, you clumsy idiot." Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. "Sir, I am so terribly sorry. It was an accident." She reached for a napkin, but Finch slapped her hand away. "Don't touch me. An accident? This is a $20,000 phone. Incompetence, that's what it is." He loomed over her, his face contorted with rage. "Are you completely stupid?" The word hung in the air, thick with condescension. Stupid. The culmination of years of sacrifice, of relentless effort, reduced to a single, dismissive syllable. A flicker of pain crossed Isabella's face, quickly masked by an almost unnerving calm. Something shifted within her. The fear receded, replaced by a steely resolve, a quiet fury simmering beneath the surface. This wasn't just about spilled water. It was about disrespect, about the casual dehumanization of those deemed beneath him. He'd mistaken her kindness for weakness, her silence for ignorance. He had no idea who she really was. She met his furious gaze, her voice steady, measured. "No, Mr. Finch," she said, her voice carrying easily through the silent room. "I am not stupid, but you may have just made a very stupid mistake." Before he could retort, her gaze flickered to the tablet displaying his precious Chimera schematics. She had been absorbing snippets of their conversation all night, and now her mind connected the dots with lightning speed. "You've been discussing the integration of your predictive logistics AI with Mr. Creed's shipping fleet. You mentioned rerouting data through Frankfurt to test latency." Her eyes, sharp and calculating, cut through his pretense. "The move that smells like fraud. They think she's invisible. They have no idea how her quiet kindness and her forgotten brilliance will burn his empire to the ground. Thud. You answered that question for me tonight. You showed me your character, and it is deeply, fatally flawed. A Leicester Finch sat there, his tech bro swagger completely gone, replaced by the dawning horror of a man watching his future burn to the ground. Damien, wait. I was under pressure. I'm not what you are, Creed said, his voice cutting like a shard of glass. Is a man who mistakes wealth for worth? You believe your success absolves you from the basic requirements of human decency? You are a liability. Your lack of respect is a strategic weakness, and I will not have it anywhere near my company or my people. Damien Creed rose from his seat, standing to his full imposing height. He looked directly at a Leicester Finch, his eyes devoid of any emotion, save for a cold finality. So to be perfectly clear, this meeting is over. Our negotiations are terminated. Project Chimera is dead. He paused, letting the words sink in. The deal is off, Mr. Finch. He then turned his back on the speechless billionaire. He walked over to Isabella, his expression softening. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a black leather wallet, and produced not a tip, but a simple, elegant business card. Miss Rosie, he said, his voice now warm and sincere, I am deeply sorry for the behavior you were forced to endure tonight on my account. No one should ever be spoken to in such a manner. He offered her the card. Your erudition is as impressive as your composure. If you ever decide you are finished with this line of work, my office would be very interested in speaking with you. My executive assistant's name is on there. Call her. We will find a place for a mind like yours, Isabella. Her mind, reeling, took the card with a slightly trembling hand. The name was simple, Damien Creed. Underneath it, a single phone number and an email address. Creed gave her another respectful nod, then turned to the maître. Please add a $5,000 tip to my bill for this young lady's service and ensure she is not reprimanded in any way for tonight's events. They were, shall we say, educational. With that, Damien Creed turned and walked out of Leak, leaving behind a shattered $3 billion deal, a humiliated tech mogul, and a 24-year-old waitress holding the key to a future she thought she had lost forever. The moment Damien Creed's formidable presence left the restaurant, the spell of silence shattered. A wave of whispers erupted, the sound of 100 wealthy patrons dissecting the corporate execution they had just witnessed. Leicester Finch remained frozen in his seat, his face a ghastly shade of pale. The buzzing from his phone on the table sounded like a swarm of angry hornets. He looked at it, then at Isabella, his eyes a mixture of pure hatred and utter disbelief. He had walked in as a king and was now a court jester. His humiliation served as the evening's main special. Without another word, he snatched his tablet and phone, shoved them into his bag, and stormed out of the restaurant, bumping into a waiter and not bothering to apologize. The door swung shut behind him, leaving a void where his colossal ego had been. Isabella was suddenly the center of a vortex. Her manager, the maître, Jean-Pierre, rushed to her side, his face a mess of confusion and awe. Isabella Montour, are you all right? What? What was that? I'm fine, Jean. Pierre, she said, her voice still steady, though her hands were shaking, clutching the heavy cardstock of Damien Creed's business card. The staff treated her like a returning war hero. The Samayer gave her a solemn nod of approval. The chef peeked out from the kitchen, a wide grin on his face. They had all endured the wrath of customers like Finch, but none had ever seen one so thoroughly and publicly dismantled. Isabella had become a legend in the space of 10 minutes. But for Isabella, the reality was more complex. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a profound sense of shock and a terrifying uncertainty. She had stood up for herself, yes, but she had also just provoked a powerful, vindictive billionaire. She had broken every rule of service. Jean-Pierre might be impressed now. But what about tomorrow? Would Finch's connections get her blacklisted from every fine dining establishment in the city? Had she just sacrificed her family's only lifeline for a moment of righteous defiance? She finished her shift in a daze, going through the motions mechanically. The patrons who remained looked at her with a newfound respect, their gazes lingering. A few even offered her words of support as they left. Well done, young lady. one elderly gentleman in finance whispered as he signed his check. When she finally left the restaurant in the early hours of the morning, the cool New York air felt like a balm on her flushed skin. She walked the few blocks to the subway, Damian Creed's business card feeling like a lead weight in her pocket. The offer had been real, she knew. The look in his eyes had been sincere, but her world had been one of survival for so long that hope felt like a dangerous foreign concept. Could she really just call the office of one of the most powerful men in the world? What would she even say? She spent a sleepless night replaying the events in her mind. The condescending questions, the snap of his fingers, the ugly sneer on his face, the weight of that one word, stupid. And then the memory of Damian Creed's story about his mother. It was that story that resonated most deeply. He hadn't just been defending her. He had been defending the honor of every person who works tirelessly in the shadows. Every person whose labor makes the lives of men like Alistair Finch possible. The next morning, news of the deal's collapse began to leak. The financial blogs were on fire. Ethereum's 3B Creed deal mysteriously implodes, read one headline. Finch's volatility raises red flags for investors, said another. No one knew the real reason, but the speculation was rampant. Ethereum Dynamics stock, which had surged in anticipation of the deal, began to tremble. Isabella sat in her small, cramped apartment, the sounds of Brooklyn traffic outside her window. She looked at her sleeping father in the other room, his breathing shallow. She looked at the stack of bills on her kitchen table, and she looked at the business card sitting next to her cold cup of coffee. She was scared, but for the first time in 3 years, she was more inspired than she was afraid. She had been reminded of who she was before she was a waitress, a scholar, a thinker, a person of value. Damian Creed hadn't just offered her a job. He had offered her a path back to herself. With a deep breath that was half prayer, half resolve, she picked up her phone. She dialed the number on the card. Office of Damian Creed. This is Eleanor. A polite, professional voice answered. Isabella's heart pounded. Hello, she said, her voice clearer than she expected. My name is Isabella Rossi. Mr. Creed gave me his card last night. He told me to call. There was a brief pause on the other end, but no confusion. Ah, Miss Rossi. Yes, Mr. Creed informed me you might be calling. He was exceptionally impressed. He has already cleared his schedule. Can you be at our headquarters at 2 p.m. today? Isabella was stunned. He had been expecting her. He had already made time. Yes, she managed to say. Yes, I can. Excellent. We look forward to seeing you, Miss Rossi. When she hung up the phone, Isabella looked at her reflection in the dark screen. The tired waitress was gone. In her place was a woman on the verge of a new beginning, a woman who had been insulted, underestimated, and unmasked all in a single night. She had lost a job, but was about to gain a future, proving that sometimes the most catastrophic endings are just brilliant beginnings in disguise. The Creed Holdings building was not just a structure. It was a statement, a sheer cliff of obsidian glass and dark steel rising from the heart of Park Avenue. It seemed to absorb the morning light rather than reflected a quiet behemoth among the city's glittering titans. It exuded a silent gravitational power that Isabella felt in her bones as she stood across the street, the simple business card clutched in her hand. Her morning had been a surreal ballet of anxiety and hope. She had woken before dawn in her small Brooklyn apartment, the familiar rumble of the elevated train her constant companion. She'd stood before her closet, a meager collection of worn-out clothes, and felt a pang of profound inadequacy. What does one wear to potentially reclaim a lost future? She settled on the only professional outfit she owned, a simple knee-length black skirt and a crisp white blouse she'd bought for a scholarship interview 4 years ago. It felt like a costume from a different lifetime. As she ironed it for the third time, her father had emerged from his room, leaning heavily on his cane. He didn't say much, but his eyes, weary but clear, shone with a fierce, terrified pride. You show them what a Ross he has made of Toro Mio. He'd whispered, his voice thick with emotion. His hope was a heavy, precious weight on her shoulders. The subway ride from her world to theirs was a journey through 1,000 different lives. Surrounded by the tired, determined faces of everyday New Yorkers, she pulled out her phone not to scroll through social media, but to open a file buried deep in her cloud storage, her thesis, computational semantics, and the mitigation of ambiguity in cross-lingual contractual law. As she read her own words, the complex theories and elegant proofs a part of her she thought had died flickered back to life. The passion, the intellectual fire, the fierce joy of wrestling with a difficult idea. It was all still there, dormant beneath layers of exhaustion and the practiced humility of a service worker. By the time she emerged from the subway into the rarefied air of Midtown Manhattan, she was no longer just Isabella the waitress. She was Isabella Rossi, the scholar arming herself with her own forgotten brilliance. Now standing before the building, the imposter syndrome returned with a vengeance. Men in bespoke suits and women with 1,000 handbags swept past her, exuding an effortless confidence she couldn't begin to fathom. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she crossed the street and pushed through the heavy glass doors. The lobby was a cathedral of corporate power, soaring ceilings, floors of polished Italian marble that reflected the frantic digital stock ticker running along one wall, in a silence so profound it seemed to have its own sound. The air smelled of clean, cold money. At the massive marble reception desk, a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and an icy demeanor looked up. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes flicking over Isabella's simple outfit with a barely concealed dismissal. "I'm here to see Mr. Creed," Isabella said, her voice sounding small in the cavernous space. "My name is Isabella Rossi." The receptionist's perfectly plucked eyebrow rose a fraction. She typed the name into her computer, her expression one of bored skepticism. Then her face changed. The skepticism vanished, replaced by a wide-eyed, almost comical surprise. Her entire posture shifted from gatekeeper to aide-demp. "Miss Rossi, of course. My apologies. We've been expecting you." She gestured to a private bank of elevators. "Please go right ahead. Penthouse floor." The elevator ride was a silent, shockingly fast ascent. Watching the floors blur past, Isabella felt as if she were literally rising above her old life. The doors opened not into a hallway, but directly into a reception area that was more like a luxurious, private library. The woman who greeted her was in her late 50s, with sharp, intelligent eyes, and an aura of quiet competence that was far more intimidating than the receptionist downstairs. "Miss Rossi, I'm Nina Vance, Mr. Creed's executive assistant," she said, her voice warm but precise. "It's a pleasure to meet you." It was the voice from the phone call. "It's a pleasure to meet you too," Isabella managed, shaking her offered hand. "Mr. Creed is just finishing a call." "Please," she said, gesturing to a leather armchair. As Isabella sat, Nina regarded her with a frank curiosity. "He hasn't cleared his schedule midday for an unscheduled external meeting in 5 years," she said as if thinking aloud. "You certainly made an impression." "It wasn't exactly my intention," Isabella admitted with a wry smile. Nina's expression softened. "The best impressions rarely are. He told me what happened. He also told me he saw in you what he values most. Grace under fire. You'll find that's the only currency that truly matters on this floor." Just then a door opened and Damian Creed emerged. Dressed in a simple cashmere sweater and tailored trousers, he looked more like a university professor than a corporate titan. He bypassed his massive mahogany desk and came directly toward her, his hand extended and a genuine smile on his face. "Isabella, thank you for coming." "I'm so glad you called," he said. "Please come in. Can Eleanor get you some coffee? I promise the service is impeccable and no one will spill it." The small joke, a shared secret between them, instantly dissolved the last of her tension. "Thank you, sir. I'm fine." He led her to a seating area near the vast floor-to-ceiling windows, which offered a god's-eye view of the city sprawling below. The office was a reflection of the man walls lined with books on history and maritime law, intricate models of cargo ships from different eras, and framed nautical charts of ancient trade routes. It was the office of a builder, not a trader. "I trust you've had some time to process the events of last night." He began, his tone gentle. "It still doesn't feel entirely real," she confessed. "I assure you it was," he said, "and I meant what I said. I had my team send for your academic records this morning from Columbia. Nina," he nodded to his assistant, who discreetly placed a thin file on the coffee table, was kind enough to summarize them for me, but I find summaries often lack the soul of a thing. Tell me about your work, Isabella, in your own words. Why computational semantics? What is it about the intersection of language and machines that fascinates you? This was not the interview she had expected. He wasn't testing her. He was inviting her to be herself. A spark ignited within her. Language is the operating system of human civilization. Mr. Creed, she began, her voice gaining confidence. But it's messy. It's filled with ambiguity, context, and nuance. Things machines find very difficult. A single misplaced comma in a legal contract can cost millions. A cultural misunderstanding in a negotiation can scuttle a deal. My thesis was about creating an AI framework that doesn't just translate words, it translates intent. It learns the context, the legal precedents, the cultural idioms to flag potential ambiguities before they become problems. It's about making communication not just faster, but safer. As she spoke, she saw a new level of interest in his eyes. He leaned forward, fully engaged. Go on, think of it like one of your shipping routes, she said, improvising an analogy. A standard translation program is like a map that shows you the shortest distance from port A to port B. But my system is like an experienced captain. It knows about the hidden reefs of legal jargon, the sudden storms of cultural favor, the tricky currents of subtext. It doesn't just plot a course. It ensures the meaning arrives intact. Damien sat back, a slow, deeply impressed smile spreading across his face. An experienced captain, he repeated softly. That is the best explanation of the value of AI I have ever heard. He looked at her, his gaze direct and serious. Last night, I told you Alistair Finch's weakness was his character. His arrogance is a strategic blindfold. He built a system to predict the future, but couldn't see the person standing right in front of him. My company's greatest vulnerability isn't storms or pirates, it's misunderstanding. The very thing your work aims to solve. He slid the file across the table to her. It wasn't her academic record, it was a formal job offer. I'm not a man who believes in charity, Isabella. I believe in investing in talent. I want to create a new division within Creed Holdings built around you and your ideas. The Global Communications Strategy Initiative. You would be its director. He let that sink in before continuing. This isn't a desk job. Your first 90 days would be a global assessment tour. You'll travel to our hubs in London, Singapore, and Hamburg. You'll meet our regional directors, our legal teams, our negotiators. You will listen to them, understand their challenges. Then you will come back here and build your team. I will give you access to our top engineers, a substantial budget, and a direct line of communication to me. Your mission is to turn your thesis from theory into the new central nervous system of my company. Isabella stared at the document, at the title, at the salary figure that made her head spin, but it was the final part of the offer that broke through her composure. Furthermore, Creed said, his voice softening, Creed Holdings will immediately assume and settle the entirety of your father's outstanding medical debts. We consider it a signing bonus, and we will establish an educational fund for you to complete your PhD at your own pace whenever you are ready. We are investing in your past, your present, and your future, Isabella. All we ask in return is your brilliance. That was when the tears finally came. They weren't tears of sadness or fear, but of a profound, earth-shattering relief. It was the release of years of pent-up grief, of the crushing weight of responsibility she had carried alone for so long. She wasn't just being offered a job, she was being given back her life. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Say you'll accept, Creed said gently. She looked up, wiping her eyes, and met his gaze. In his eyes, she saw not pity, but a deep, unwavering belief in her. And for the first time in years, she felt that same belief in herself. I accept, she said, her voice clear and strong. The first week was a baptism by fire. Isabella was given a temporary office on the penthouse floor, a stone's throw from Creed's own. Elena took her under her wing, guiding her through the labyrinthine protocols of the corporation. There was skepticism, of course. She was an outsider, a 24-year-old with no corporate experience handpicked by the CEO. In a meeting with the IT and legal departments, a cynical veteran IT director named Marcus Thorne made his disdain clear. "With all due respect, Miss Rosie," he'd said, his arms crossed, "we have multi-million-dollar translation software suites. What exactly do you, a linguistics major, bring to the table that they don't?" Instead of being intimidated, Isabella saw her opening. "Mr. Thorne, your software can translate the word yes in 100 languages. But can it tell you the difference between the yes that means I enthusiastically agree in German and the yes that means I hear you, but I do not agree in Japanese? Can it tell you when a contract's liability clause, translated perfectly from Mandarin, actually conflicts with a precedent in EU maritime law? Your software translates words. I'm here to build a system that understands worlds. There's a difference." A silence fell over the room. Marcus Thorne stared at her, his cynical smirk slowly fading, replaced by a grudging respect. From that moment on, she had the full cooperation of his department. The most profound moment of that first week, however, happened outside the office. It was a phone call she made from the privacy of her new, still empty office overlooking the city. She dialed the number for the hospital billing department. After navigating the automated menus, she spoke to a clerk. "Yes, I'm calling to settle the account of Mr. Antonio Rossi," she said, her heart pounding. She gave the account number, which was burned into her memory. "Okay," the clerk said tiredly. "The outstanding balance is 187,452 on 6 times." Music. "How would you like to make a payment today?" Isabella took a deep breath. "I'd like to pay the full amount right now." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Excuse me?" the clerk finally asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Isabella calmly read out the Creed Holdings corporate account number Elalanina had given her. After a few moments of frantic typing, the clerk came back on the line, her tone completely transformed. "Ma'am, the payment has been approved. The balance is 0. Your father's account is settled in full." Hanging up the phone, Isabella leaned her forehead against the cool glass of the window. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt the freedom of an open sky. The boardroom in Creed Holdings' Geneva headquarters was perched above the tranquil waters of Lake Geneva. Inside, however, the atmosphere was electric. Isabella, dressed in a sharply tailored navy blue suit, stood at the head of a gleaming conference table, commanding the attention of the company's entire European executive board. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the interface of her Rosetta Initiative School. It was no longer a theory. It was a powerful, functioning tool. "As you can see," she said, her voice resonating with quiet authority, "the system has flagged a potential conflict in Section 4B of the proposed merger with the Dubois shipping line. While the French to English translation is technically accurate, our system has cross-referenced it with Monsieur Dubois' past negotiation tactics and recent changes in French labor law. It predicts he is using the term personnel contingent to imply non-UN contractors, which would put us in violation of our own ethical sourcing protocols. It recommends we counter with the more precise term employers directs and seek clarification." She switched to flawless French, directly addressing the French contingent of the board, explaining the nuance in their own language. The executives, who had been struggling with this very point for weeks, stared at her in awe. She had not only solved their problem, but had also given them the precise linguistic tool to win the negotiation. As the board erupted into a spirited, multilingual discussion, Damian Creed, seated at the head of the table, caught her eye. He gave her a subtle, proud wink. It was a look that said, "I knew it. I knew that was who you were all along." Later, an older board member, a gruff German shipping magnate named Klaus, approached her. "Fräulein Rossi," he rumbled, "your system is remarkable. I read in the Financial Times that Ethereum Dynamics was finally sold off for parts at auction last month. Alistair Finch lost everything. The man had brilliant technology, but he was a fool." "He wasn't a fool, Herr Schmidt," Isabella replied calmly, looking out at the serene lake. "He was just a very poor linguist. He never understood that the most important words in any business are please and thank you." Looking at her reflection in the glass, she no longer saw the harried waitress from Lianico, nor the terrified girl in the Park Avenue lobby. She saw a woman who had been tested in the crucible, who had faced down humiliation with intellect and grace. She had found her voice, reclaimed her future, and was now charting her own course across a world of infinite possibilities, the quiet captain of her own magnificent destiny. The story of Isabella Rossi and Alistair Finch is a powerful reminder that our true selves are revealed in the small moments, in the unguarded interactions. It shows us that dignity is a currency more valuable than dollars, and respect is an investment that always pays dividends. Alistair Finch's empire was built on code, but it crumbled because of a defect in his character. Isabella was trapped by circumstance, but she was freed by her intellect and her refusal to be diminished. This story resonates because we have all at some point felt underestimated. We have all seen arrogance go unchecked. What does this story make you think about? Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's true character was revealed by how they treated another? Share your thoughts and your own stories in the comments below. I read every one of them. If this story moved you or made you think, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more true stories about the hidden dramas that shape our world. Thank you for listening.